So in a couple of months' time, be it in June or October, Brexit will finally mean Brexit. And all the creative or ambiguity around it will be gone, much to the relief of those of us who find endless speculation based on speculation incredibly irritating. Now, as far as Northern Ireland is concerned, the main fantasy has been that a hard Brexit, whatever that means, it's not entirely clear what a soft Brexit means either, by the way, that would inevitably lead to a border poll. Once a border poll is called because of the rising Catholic population and the falling Protestant population, that would inevitably lead to United Ireland. Now, a lot of this stuff, especially the scaremongering around demography, has always seemed to me to be an activity for a lot of useful idiocy, in the sense that it's always been obvious to me that not all Catholics are all going to vote the same way in that referendum, and not all Protestants will either. But if you run a set of politics that polarizes those two identities and makes them more important than anything else, that does not necessarily mean that you're going to create grounds for sufficient consensus to change the constitutional status of Northern Ireland. The constitutional status, for all its difficulties and nearly 40 years of civil war, has actually been in place for nearly 100 years. People become habituated to certain ways of doing things, reading certain newspapers, watching certain television programs, and they also develop the kind of an indifference to each other. Now, last week, a poll conducted by Murray for Queen's University more or less confirmed some of that scepticism, that Catholic and Protestant were not in any way reliable markers for how people planned, even in the event of a hard Brexit, to vote for United Ireland.
Yes, you're right. 21% would favour a United Ireland, which sounds like a small number. But the percentage favouring staying in the UK is 50%, and the rest are don't knows or would not vote. So it's a ratio of about 2.4 to 1. And what's interesting is that when we look at Catholic opinion, 42% of Catholics are in favour of a United Ireland, but their support varies quite considerably depending on what type of Brexit we're likely to have. So if the UK were to click its fingers and stay in the EU, just 28% of Catholics would vote for a United Ireland. But in the context of a hard Brexit and all of the associated concerns that Catholics may have about that, it would go up to 53%. And so 21% sounds like a small figure, but a lot could happen in the campaign, and a lot could happen as a function of the type of UK exit that we have.
So on foot of all of the speculation, but more specifically the visit of Jeremy Corbyn to Queen's University Belfast yesterday, the Guardian newspaper asked me to write a short op-ed outlining some of the context for that visit, and also to take on board some of the speculation beforehand that he was going to talk about the popularity of United Ireland North and South. So I did a fairly standard piece of analysis for them. I'll just read out very, very quickly some of the passages that I've put there. You can get it on the Guardian. Corbyn was clear with his Belfast audience that he would not reverse the referendum decision, choosing instead to commend the virtues of a soft border. A wise move, sure to appeal to that particular audience. And another survey published this week showed that only 1 in every 3 Protestants want a hard Brexit. The Protestants of Ulster are nothing if not pragmatic. To the DUP leader Arlene Foster, who grew up in an Anglican parish whose boundaries stop at the border but whose parishioners are drawn from the populations on both sides, this pragmatism will be of no surprise. Protestant farmers, particularly dairy farmers in Fermanagh in the north, send their milk yields these days to Monaghan in the south, and that's pretty much a gift. That cross-border trade on the micro level is pretty much a gift of the single market, which was initiated after many years of preparation back in 1992, so nearly just over 25 years old. And that's really the practical outworking of the single market. So DUP voters, people who voted for Arlene and Fermanagh, are very aware of that microfine trade that they depend upon. Not significant in a national way. Also, there's another poll out, I think, that pointed out that actually Catholics aren't that keen on putting a border between Northern Ireland and Great Britain either. That shouldn't surprise, because most of us who voted Remain aren't particularly keen on having barriers anywhere, whether it happens to be on the border or down the Irish Sea. So another little bit towards the end. Could all this lead to United Ireland? Well, despite the popular mood music, Brexit is unlikely to have much effect in the short term, partly because the outcome of a soft Brexit, however that is defined or achieved, will not be felt immediately. More relevant is the century-long failure of Republicans, both north and in the south, to reach out to their unionist neighbours to make them an offer they cannot refuse. The Good Friday Agreement, in my view, provides them with the means of developing such an offer, and as Corbyn has said yesterday in his speech, with sufficient will, the Good Friday Agreement will survive Brexit. Now, that may come as a disappointment to some folk who, it seems to me, aren't particularly committed to the Good Friday Agreement. And I'm not simply talking about the DUP there, who clearly did not sign that agreement, were not involved in that agreement, and certainly did not publicly endorse. In fact, for several years afterwards, tried to undermine the agreement in certain limited ways. However, this business of how can a United Ireland find its success? Well, I've also gone on and I've quoted, of all people, Sir Edward Carson, later to be Lord Carson, who said in the House of Commons in summer of 1913, just before, in the middle of the Ulster crisis, but just before the First World War, if ever you are going to bring the Ulster portion of the community into line with the rest of Ireland, you will never do it by any means except those of persuasion. The Brexit-inspired political vacuum in Westminster, as well as in Stormont, has given rise to all manner of fantasy outcomes. In Northern Ireland, we have tried conflict and it has failed. Typically, war tends towards an end point, victory for one side, defeat for the other. But peace, as we have it, is different. It isn't meant to stop suddenly or gradually over time, but to deepen. And people in Northern Ireland know enough through this peace process, this glacially slow peace process, that they are not going to get exactly whatever it was they thought they were voting for. But they do know the future is going to be different, whether they like all of it or not. And that is my piece. Go and read it on The Guardian. It's on the site there. It's on the front page of the comment page today. It'll obviously be moving off soon. You'll find it in the comment zone here on YouTube, or when I get around to posting it on Slugger, it'll be there also. Cheers.